let me give you just a 30-second thumbnail of how we got here. Several months ago, I saw an ad on TV about some organization named Braver Angels, and the ad got my attention. And I actually mentioned it to Candace, and Candace said, "Yeah, I think I saw that." And she was interested too. So several of you know that I've been working on the idea of talking about politics and religion in a healthy way for Rotarians for many years. So when I saw Braver Angels and what they were working on, I just had to find out what this group was doing. So I got their emails, signed up, and Eric sent an email out inviting people to a face-to-face meeting. And I looked where the location was, and it was in Simpsonville, about 10 minutes from me. So had to go there, went to their face-to-face meeting, met the leaders and some local people. And I said to Eric, "Would you be interested in making a presentation to our Rotary Club?" And he said, "No problem." And that's how we got here today. So let me just give you the very brief background. Eric is the Upstate South Carolina co-chair for the Braver Angels Palmetto Alliance. He earned a BA in History and Political Science from Wofford College in 1992. Eric researched the impact of religion on the progress of developing countries, and also has an MBA from Ohio State University, which led him to a career in the chemical industry and a position with Michelin. So give a warm welcome to Eric Ireland.
All right. Well, Ken, thank you very much. And also Candace, thank you very much for facilitating this and making it happen. I'm going to take about 15 minutes to go through a presentation, sharing with you about Braver Angels, who we are, what we do, and really with the intention of doing two things. The first is to help you understand who we are and what we're about. And then importantly, identify areas that we may be able to collaborate on or do some things together on. As you'll read later, we're very much, and there's a lot of similarities between us and Rotary. And one of those is being active and involved in the community. And so this is what is exciting to us, is being able to speak to you in this regard. The way I'm going to do this is I want to talk about the problem. Whenever you have an organization, there's a problem you're trying to address. So talk about that first, and then talk about our mission, what we're trying to do there. And then very interestingly, Rotary and Braver Angels have a lot of commonalities. And in fact, we have a Rotary presentation that is dedicated to Rotary, because we do a lot of different things with Rotary throughout the country. And I'll speak a little bit about that and that alignment, and then tell you our story. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, talk to you about what we do, our offerings, the types of things that we do in service of our mission, and in ways I think might align with what you're trying to accomplish with Rotary. Hopefully have a lot of time left at the end for question and discussion. But while I'm talking, and I'll talk a little bit more about Jay and Daniel during the presentation, but to help take advantage of our time, maybe throw questions in the chat, and Daniel and Jay will be able to answer those on the fly as we're going through, and then we can have some more thorough question Q&A and discussion at the end. So with that, let me launch in and talk about what is our problem that we're dealing with. Polarization, something that I'm sure everybody's familiar with. The thing about polarization that is different, there's always difference of opinion, right? But when you get to that level of polarization where you don't feel like you're on the same team anymore, where people that you ought to feel a certain similarity, a certain kinship with, suddenly don't feel that way or don't seem that way, or we don't behave that way, you've got polarization. And so that is, I think, an issue that we're all very familiar with. It has been increasing significantly over the last number of years. You know, this was one statistic I thought was particularly troubling. You know, 5% of Americans said that they would be concerned with a member of their family marrying someone of the other political party. In 2005, mind you, 2005, that had jumped to 40 to 45%. You can imagine where it is right now. And so this is an issue that we have here in the United States. It's seeping into all matter of our civic discourse. And so what Braver Angels is wanting to be a part of is this civic renewal, is making all of this better. Because at the end of the day, we really do have, and I think we all feel this and know this, have more in common than we think. One of our, and you'll see references to Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War and a lot of Braver Angels materials, because the Civil War was really the last time we were this polarized, and there's statistics and studies to show this. But also with a leader like Abraham Lincoln, he kind of shows the way to try and navigate through this. Many great quotes of Abraham Lincoln, but one in particular that speaks to our mission and what we try to accomplish is, he said, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him." And that, at its essence, is what Braver Angels is trying to seeks to accomplish. So, what is our mission? Our mission is really to work to depolarize the United States. Doesn't mean we all are to get along and sing kumbaya, but what it means is we need to be able to get to a place where we can have constructive dialogue, constructive engagement, constructive civic discourse. And we do this in three different tranches. You know, at an individual level, getting to understand other sides and other points of view. In our communities, engaging in our communities in our local area, and then finally in the political and broader realm with things that we do, offerings that we have, engagements that we create to make that a more depolarized environment. Now, in our communities is really why we're here right now. I represent the Palmetto Alliance. So does Jay. We are leaders of that alliance. Daniel is a part of an alliance in Colombia, as well as an ambassador for Braver Angels here in South Carolina. Alliances, there are alliances throughout the country. And what an alliance is intended to do is work at the local level to deliver resources, to deliver workshops, to provide access to other Braver Angels offerings and assets. Braver Angels recognize at the end of the day that for civic renewal, for the kind of renewal we're trying to create, this depolarization, you can do some stuff from the top down, but really has to happen from the bottom up, more importantly. And it's the alliances is where that's happening, is where that touching of the communities takes place, and where that connection takes place. Now, speaking of communities, I'm talking to Rotary, and when you think of Rotary, it is all about the communities and the local communities. And that's where there's some really interesting parallels between Braver Angels and between Rotary. First, as I've noticed, Braver Angels is about bringing Americans together across partisan divides. The exact same is with Rotary and uniting people to create lasting change. We're wanting to do the same. Ours is a little bit more narrowly focused around depolarization, but very in line with what Rotary is wanting to accomplish. We engage with those who disagree, looking for common ground. Very much in the same light, you know, Rotary is providing services to others and to advance understanding, goodwill, and peace. That is absolutely of a piece of what Braver Angels is about. Red and blue leaders are equally represented. So here I'm sharing some Braver Angels nomenclature. Red is conservative, blue is progressive, liberal, and we are very intentional about making sure that all, when it comes to workshops or all the different types of engagements that we do, that we're as divided as equally as possible in order to allow diverse opinions, a common mentality to take hold rather than segregate off into our own worlds. We're very intentional about doing this. And don't be worried if you consider yourself purple, which a lot of people do. Purples are very much part of the mix. And one of the things that you discover when you get more involved with Braver Angels is that you start off red and blue, and you realize fairly soon on that you're probably more purple than anything. Additionally, we're looking to, because of what I just talked about, be an organization that reflects the country we serve, that really a house united, bringing in people from all different types of backgrounds and perspectives in order to come together to depolarize. Because really, if you can't depolarize in just a segment. You got to be across the board, and we'll talk a little bit later about some of the things that Braver Angels does in that regard. And this is very much in line with what with Rotary and what Rotary is trying to accomplish through its global network, and not only celebrating the contributions of other people of other backgrounds, but bringing them together to do things. And that's what Braver Angels is about. We started back in 2016. This was the first famous workshop that took place. A lot of the founders of Braver Angels, David Lapp right here, David Blankenhorn right here, and oh my gosh, Bill, help somebody, Bill Doherty. These are the three founders of Braver Angels. Bill is a marriage counselor by trade, and they used a lot of principles of marriage counseling to bring half reds, half blues together for a 2-day session to see if we could get these folks to get along. And I'll be darned if it didn't work. Braver Angels started in 2016 during the election. Then really came out of the rancor at that time, and those three founders recognized that we had to do something. So they had that first workshop that took place, and we still do those. I did that workshop out at Furman 2 weeks ago. It's that red blue workshop. So it started in 2016. It grew. 2018, we started to become more of an organization. As you can imagine, in 2020, with all that was going on, it really exploded the growth, continued to grow. And we've now branched out into Braver Politics. So not just the offerings that we have for individuals and communities, but we become more engaged with at the congressional as well as at the local government level, and providing workshops and services to help depolarize. And then starting this year, which kicked off in our convention at Gettysburg this year, was Braver Network, where Braver Angels is really trying to initiate a movement, not just be an organization, but help propel a movement around depolarization. And to do this, you need to get a lot of people involved. And so Braver Network is about Braver Angels networking with, it is now over 100 different organizations here in the United States that have very similar missions to depolarize and to be a part of what is called civic renewal. So I've just been talking a lot and throwing a lot at you. Now I'm going to switch to a brief video that just kind of gives you a flavor of Braver Angels. This is on our website, braverangels.org. You can just type in Braver Angels. There's a lot of material here about us, our backgrounds, the different types of things that we are involved in, information on polarization. Would love for you to be a member if you wanted to. But for now, let's just watch this video.
Politics has always been a passionate subject, and we've always had deep political disagreements. That's the way it's supposed to be. But we've gotten to the point where people can't even talk to one another. Americans no longer see their political opponents as simply wrong or misguided. They see them as bad people whose ways of thinking are dangerous and incomprehensible. They see them as enemies. This level of rancor and mistrust threatens our democracy, and it makes it harder for us to move forward as a nation, regardless of who the president is.
The fact that we live in what feels like, some people call it a cold civil war, that takes a toll on all of us.
We've been excommunicated from a lot of our friends. in the last couple of years, and it makes me sad.
This is one organization that's doing a lot to kind of overcome that and get people back to where we were, which is neighbors, friends, communities.
We are truly bipartisan. From our staff to our funding to our board of directors, we're evenly split, half conservative, half liberal. Everything we do comes from the bottom up. We're an almost entirely volunteer-led operation. We wanted to see, could we get together a group of folks who voted for Trump and a group of folks who voted for Clinton and get them in a room together to see how can we bring people together to not get them to agree or to come to the middle, but to maybe change how they think about one another.
When you're there in person and you have to face the person you're talking to, we remember suddenly the rules of civil discourse and kind of how we should act in society. It's something that really distinguishes this form of conversation and debate.
It's all well and good to talk about civility and being nice to people, but the missing ingredient is courage.
The courage that it takes to have a difficult conversation, to put yourself out there.
What we've been saying is that this year, it's not enough to call in our better angels. We have to call in our braver angels.
The name Braver Angels captures the evolving spirit of better angels. We have to be willing to summon the courage to see the best in the other side, see the best in our fellow Americans.
Courage means becoming a leader in your own community who's standing up for America, not just for your political party or your tribe or folks with whom you share an identity, but standing up for something larger that we can all believe in. If we can create a large enough movement that is clamoring for a more courageous style of politics, we can change the incentives.
That's something that can only be achieved through what we call patriotic empathy, this idea that your love for your country is demonstrated in your love for your fellow American. As Braver Angels, we're able to lean into that with courage and boldness.
It will make you feel like we can serve this place and our country can serve humanity in a way that is actually beautiful and actually does us justice.
This is not a left-wing movement. This is not a right-wing movement, but it is indeed an American movement. We still have it in us to be champions for what is right and what is graceful and what is decent here in the United States.
Go to braverangels.org, sign up to join our email list, and at the end of the day, try to treat each other with respect, empathy, and find the courage needed to talk to people, even if, and perhaps especially when, you don't agree with them.
Just have a few more slides before we get to the end and can have a little conversation and discussion. Uh-oh, what did I not do?
Comedy Central presents.
Sorry about that. Just a couple more slides before we. Okay. So just a couple things to key in on. This is not, Braver Angels is not about changing people's views on issues. You know, oftentimes people say, okay, tell me how to win. Tell me how to win the argument. It is not about changing people's views. What it's about is helping us to change the views of each other, to help us learn about the other, to help us learn about their views. And then as a part of that, coming out of that, be able to find more collaborative solutions. Now, I'm a conservative person, and I've been involved in a lot of different things related to Braver Angels, where I'm sharing my opinions and listening to others and being in dialogue. And I can tell you, I don't think any of my opinions have changed over the last few years, but very much my opinions of those who hold different opinions has changed, and my opinions of their opinions have changed, if that makes any sense. And when that happens, it lowers the temperature, right? It makes it takes the temperature down, and it allows for really constructive conversation, really rich dialogue to take place, so that you can actually start to collaborate and you can start to do things together. I think most of us are of a certain age. There's the old story about Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, two people who obviously are very far removed on the political spectrum, but were very famous for being able to get together over drinks and talk through their differences. And a lot of the reason for that was that they were able to dialogue. They were able to talk to each other, and they didn't see the other as an enemy. They understood each other, and they understood that if they talked and they worked through things, that they could find ways to collaborate. The different types of things that we do at Braver Angels, they seem to work. 70 to 80% better understanding of those of differing opinions, and increasing positive attitudes because of that. And that's what we're about. There's more than that, but that is the heart and soul of what we're about, is lowering that temperature. To do that, there's a number of different things that we offer. I just put some down here that I felt were most relevant to the folks here. There's a number of workshops. These are all online, and we also do these in person as well. What are called red-blue workshops, where you get both sides together to actually talk and dialogue. One is about building skills for communicating across division, different skills, both speaking and listening skills, as well as skills for setting a tone for a good conversation. Depolarizing within is an eye-opening one, because it allows you to see what are the types of things that you do yourself to polarize and to create polarizing types of environments. Believe it or not, we have offerings for families, and they're very popular this time of year to help families when they get together be able to navigate some of these debates, as well as in the political area. We host and help facilitate debates in a very structured way that allows views to be shared on very controversial topics, but shared in a way that allows both sides to feel like they're able to speak and be heard. Webinars, podcasts, many different types of things. I first got involved in Braver Angels in this last one right here with one-on-one conversations, where you are paired up with somebody on the opposite side and they take you through a structured dialogue. And I still have I have one individual up in New York who is an ongoing friend because of that dialogue that we had. So in closing, Braver Angels is very, very simple what we're about. I do not like that man. I must get to know him better. And that's what we want to facilitate, is understanding the other side, the other point of view better, so that we can bridge those divides. We can depolarize, we can renew our civic life, and we can find common ground to help build this wonderful country that we're blessed to be a part of. That is all I have prepared. I'd now like to just kind of open it up, just stop the presentation and just open it up for questions and dialogue. And I'll field them, and then along with Jay and Daniel, be happy to take any questions or comments.
Wow, Eric, I just thank you so very much. This is a conversation that is just very important and will continue to be rich for us. I do know that Lance had a question in the chat that I don't think was addressed, and it had to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I read a little bit that Braver Angels, yes, focuses on red and blue in politics, but I think also touches on religion and other schisms that we have. Yeah. Can you address Lance's question?
Yeah, so I'll answer, and then Danny or Jay, if you want to jump in, but we don't take political positions. So you will not, on any of these types of things, Braver Angels will not take a political position beyond driving home, the mission of what I just talked about in terms of bridging divides and being able to have dialogue across differences. That said, types of offerings we might have that could help with that is with our debates. We have very structured debates that we do them at colleges. We do them for civic organizations, and they are designed for these types of topics to allow both sides to come together and do that. So that's what we could help facilitate as a debate. On some of our podcasts, we will have speakers come in and talk and share, their differences, again, in a measured, structured way. We have something that's called a fishbowl, where you'll have 6 people from both sides you'll have 6 people from one side of an issue share their thinking on it, and then the other side of the issue provides their opinions and thoughts. And so again, it's not a debate. It's more of a structured way of understanding how the other side feels. That's one of a number of different things that we do to help with, whether it's that issue or other issues, create an environment where dialogue, understanding can take place. But that's what we're about. We're not about taking positions per se on things.
Thank you. And I just have one other observation, and then I don't want to dominate the floor, but your video clearly brought home the point that this is people sitting down together. Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, social media are not at the table. Do you actually take people's phones up at the door?
You know, we have, that's a good point. I don't know what they did at that first one. We don't do that in our workshops. And you know what? I talked to you about the workshop we did at Furman. We had those students for an hour and a half, and we've done some at Wofford here, and they don't open their phones during the whole thing. I mean, they do not. I kind of keep an eye on it as a father with teenagers, and they don't. And I like to think I ought to ask the question, but I like to think that they get it, that this is actually a big deal.
Great, thank you. Lene, you have a question or comment?
Yes, I have a question. I'm trying to figure out how to ask it. So I will probably kind of dance around the question, but not intentionally. So I have a lot of respect for folks. You were talking about your fishbowl, where people are willing to come together and learn from each other. You know, you may disagree with somebody, but understanding what's behind what they think, and they're working to understand what's behind what you think. And in my thought, what I'm thinking is, when they come together in something like the fishbowl, they're coming with this, I'm thinking, this equal willingness to learn from each other.
Yes.
As a nation, and this may be wrong on my part, this may be wrong thinking, but as a nation, and particularly, some friends, relatives, sometimes I feel like folks aren't willing to learn from each other. That polarization is so entrenched. It doesn't matter you're red or blue. I've seen it both ways. That, how do we as a nation or a community or as a democracy, get to the point where we make it just not okay, but a desired behavioral outcome, that you're seeking to talk calmly and to be respectful of one another and to learn from one another?
Thank you. Thank you very much. That is a very important question. Thank you for asking it. So what Braver Angels, if you think about the population, kind of, let's say 15% on either side, they're not interested in this. They're interested in, and they are not interested in all, and they will not respond to what Braver Angels is doing, or other organizations like ours. But what we're seeking to do is to strengthen that very large majority in the middle that may think differently about things, but is perfectly willing to engage in responsible civic discourse. What we're also hoping to do, not just provide skills and understanding and knowledge, but strengthen those folks, affirm those folks. Daniel has put in the chat here. I'd encourage you to take a look at those, a number of different resources you can go to, podcasts, YouTube videos of where we've done debates and things like that. And part of what we are, of our intention and our mission is to strengthen those folks who often feel kind of like they're left out or they're on an island, when in fact they're not on an island. They're very much the large majority. A quick anecdote: a couple of years ago, there was an abortion ruling that took place in Georgia. It doesn't matter the context, but obviously a very explosive issue. And a study was done of Twitter. And what they noticed that first day or so, there was a lot of tweeting out and a lot of different opinions being shared. Over time, and when I say over time, in just a matter of a few days, the opinions and the voices in the middle started to die down. And it was the opinions and voices on the extremes that took over, so that after about a week, those middle, the kind of the reasonable, the, hey, I'm trying to understand what you're saying, but here's what I'm thinking, they were gone. They had checked out. I'm done. It was the extremes that were still left and, you know, kind of yelling at each other. So everybody's thinking, well, that's America. It really isn't. 70% is just checked out, but we think that's America, and we want to strengthen that 70% of America that says that's nonsense, and we want to engage with each other.
Hey, Eric, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
Okay.
good. Go ahead.
There's some background noise, so I just wanted to be mindful and stay muted because I've got a dog barking. Hopefully it's not coming through. Let me know if it does. I wanted to go back real quick to the Israel-Palestine issue, just to say that the way that I answered wasn't attempting to dodge the question. And I fully, you know, what Eric said is exactly correct. As an organization, as a national organization, Braver Angels doesn't take a stand on an issue that's that is political in nature like that. Our focus is to do the work of depolarization and bridging divides. But what's key, especially with something as contentious as that, is, and I think part of the answer to the last question we had, I apologize, I don't remember your name right now, but is to model a different way. That's part of why it's so valuable, the debates that Braver Angels puts on, the dialogues that Braver Angels puts on, like fish bowls and workshops, because it's modeling a different way to have discourse that is moderated, that is respectful, that does seek to understand instead of just to, insult or persuade. And I brought up our partner organization, Bridge USA, because they're doing some incredible work on college and university campuses around that very issue, just to show that not, just because the media portrays students as one way or another, there are students that are leading the charge in a different direction. But yeah, I think modeling it is key, showing people that there's another way to interact with their neighbors that they disagree with. And then, any of the workshops and materials Eric's already touched on.
Thanks, Danny.
And Danny, thank you so much. I apologize that I missed your response to Lance's question. And there's so many good resources in the chat. And I want to remind everybody that particularly for this program, when you get a copy of the video, you will also get a copy of the text from the chat, because I know that once we sign off, sometimes the chat just goes somewhere. So all of these resources will be made available to you after the meeting. Other conversation, other questions, comments? John, I think, yeah.
I just have a comment. It seems as I process this, and I'm sure we've all thought about it long before tonight, but it just seems to me about the last 2 decades that whenever it was when we went from 3 main networks to 24/7 with multiple cable channels, and then social media and people saying and doing things on social media they wouldn't even do to your face. Seems to me that's a big part of what's created the polarization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in fact, in a number of our workshops, they'll speak to online and social media and how to interact, and in fact, how not to, just don't interact. But you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
I actually want to give a shout out to Sue and Doug, and I'm going to embarrass you for a second here, so just hang on. So Eric, as you and Ken and I discussed last week when we were preparing for this, I shared that our neighborhood, in fact, our community since 2016 has become pretty polarized. Mm-hmm. And to the point where everybody knows what so-and-so is, or they know what we are, or whatever. Stu and Doug, I really honor them a lot because they seem to not let any of that get in the way of the relationships that they have formed here in Sun City, and in particular in our neighborhood. So good job, guys. When I grow up, I want to be you in some ways, at least. Maybe at least better at mini golf. We played recently. There's there's an indoor adult place up in Charlotte called the Pottery. So if you ever really want to have a good time where they come around and serve you more and more drinks as you get worse and worse in your game, that's the place to go.
Love it.
Okay. And, although I have to say, because Greg's smiling, he actually beat our professional golfers up there in the other Hollywood Square. So yay for you.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, okay. Moving right along to being a little more serious, I guess, if we have to. I will, Julia, please.
I was just going to say, you know, as a kid growing up, my mom was very much a Democrat and my dad was very much a Republican. And it was always interesting to get them right around the time that it would come to vote, you know, every 4 years when things are, to get them, especially when my brother and I got to be junior high school, at the dinner table, to get them to try to come to an agreement somehow, because, you know, they would both just go and vote and they would cancel each other's votes all the time. And so my brother and I were always trying to be like, where's that middle? Where's that purple? But I think it's a great example when you talk about families, especially that come together and they have very different opinions. And then you're sitting around the table for Thanksgiving and then someone's like, oh, don't bring up politics, or, you know, but I remember sitting at the table trying to get my parents to, like, you know, tell me, you know, what is it about this person that you like? What is it about this person? Was a mini little version of this. But that definitely there were years where there was really strong opinions one way or another. And I think it is something that if we can bring people together to find a way to just say, okay, well, that's not my opinion, but I can see how it's your opinion. And we don't do that enough. We're so set on, you know, trying to say, well, this is my opinion and you need to see that it's the right opinion. I think I've never heard of Braver Angels either. And I think this is an amazing thing, especially when I think about reaching out to, you know, probably people where we can make a bigger difference, like the younger groups, like in college and in high school, where we can say, you know, let's have a civil conversation. It's amazing. Hats off to you guys for what you're doing.
Thank you. And I think it's, you know, my working the little bit that I have done with the college students, I think they're almost a thirst for, there's got to be a better way to do this, you know.
Right, so, right. Like, we don't want to end up like that. What can we do there, you know?
One of the things that I've considered, especially after visiting with Eric and certainly hearing your presentation today, is, as most of you know, Rotary has a theme for each month, and February is peace building, conflict prevention, or conflict resolution. And I think it might be an opportunity for us to host a workshop as a club. And we'll, if the board supports that, then we'll be and it would be available, of course, to anybody, not just Rotarians. But I think, and particularly in the year we have ahead of us, for like a dozen different reasons, it's critical that we just begin to see each other as human beings again. And Eric, thank you so much for helping us just have the conversation. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And if there's any thoughts or anything that this spurs, you know, please come back to us and let us know. If there's other organizations, or you'd even be interested in doing a workshop or something like that after you've looked at our sites and such, we'd be happy to engage in any way. But thank you very much for your time this evening.
Well, thank you. And Eric and Danny, let's give them a big round of applause. Now, this is sort of our on-mute Zoom applause. That's what we do when we're on mute, to make sure you know that we're applauding. One thing we do also for our program folks, I promised we're not going to mail you a pen or a mug, but what we do is we have little free libraries all over the upstate in different places. And every week we have a couple of our members who suggest a book related to each program. And so this one particularly, The Cat with the Missing Sock. We want to thank you, Eric and Danny and Jay. It's going to be dedicated in your honor and will be donated to a little free library in the upstate. And Lene, I believe you had selected this book. Would you like to share something about it?
Sure, thank you. Basically, the little black cat's missing a sock, and he goes out looking for it, and looking for happiness and acceptance. I'm reading what I wrote here, but he meets a little girl named Annabelle and her talking teddy bear Theodore, and they have just the right solution, Annabelle's baby sock. But basically, it's a book to help children begin to look at the power of empathy, looking beyond appearances, and giving to those who have less than us. So it's a way to help children to begin to build some of the skills that we want them to take into adulthood.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
That is so cool, by the way. That is so cool that you all, I mean, how cool is that? Thank you.
So the other thing we do to wind up a Rotary meeting is to recite the four-way test together. And for those, if you're on mute, please unmute yourself. And we say this together as we wind up the meeting. Of the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First,
is it the truth?
Second,
is it fair to all concerned?
Third,
will it build better friendship?
And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you so much, everybody, for being here this evening. It was a wonderful program and a wonderful time just to learn some amazing new things. And so Eric and Danny and Jay, thank you so much for the work you do. And I think we'll be continuing this conversation.
And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
And happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Right. Happy Thanksgiving.
Awesome.